As if bearing a message, the wind descended from the northern crest, judgmental, unyielding, and cold. Weston Clay grunted and pushed his horse forward while tightening his collar. He no longer spoke to anyone but the animal, rarely even then. The town of Red Hollow sat behind him, teeming with pew-warmers and cowards who cowered from the truth and hid behind walls when the outside world demanded civility. Up ahead, at the meadow's edge, where the frost had made the grass brittle, there was a fluttering sound. Not fabric, not leaf, the weight of something that recalled pain caused it to move. Weston's eyes narrowed. Two people, slouched and quiet, were slashed to the wooden rail like shattered scarecrows in the snow beneath a red shawl that snagged on a fence post like a flag. His horse came to a standstill. One of them was almost an adult, and the other was just beginning to reach girlhood. Faces covered in shame and dust. Their lips were squeezed shut, and their hands were bound not by force or gag, but out of pride. As a warning, they had been left there to freeze like animals. The older one looked up for amusement. Weston looked into her dark eyes. She didn't flinch. She didn't plead. She just noticed him. The leather creaked as he got from his saddle. The sound of his knife-slicing rope was all that came out of his mouth. The younger one snuggled against his chest and sobbed, as if she wasn't sure he was real. Until the final knot was cut, the older girl remained motionless. With her chin up and her legs shaking, she stood by herself. "Who did this?" With a voice as dry as pine bark, Weston inquired. Neither responded. Didn't need to. His shoulders bent as if something nasty was awakening inside him as he looked toward the town. Weston Clay never allowed another soul to close again after burying the last person he cared about 2 winters later. However, there was something in the girl's refusal to fall that made it seem less like charity. It was like to a jolt. With their bare feet crunching softly, they silently followed him. The elder female stopped as they got to his horse, placing her hand on the saddle. She didn't inquire as to their destination. She just gave one nod. The younger girl was hoisted onto the horse by Weston. Her sister braided with one hand while she clutched his coat in the other. It took 2 hours to go back to his cabin. Halfway through, it snoozed. Although nobody said anything, the quiet wasn't meaningless. It throbbed. He didn't flush when he opened his cabin. Half isolation, half firewood in one room. Whatever remorse had crept into his ribcage, he had constructed it for one man and one ghost, not 2 females. Nevertheless, he lit the fireplace, got out 3 cups, filled the kettle with water, and gave the girl some bread slices. With tears streaming down her face, the younger one gobbled it up. The elderly ate slowly. Despite her hand shaking, she maintained a straight back. "What's your name?" Weston inquired. The younger one responded. "Mina." He gave the older female a look. She returned his gaze. "Tala," she remarked in a voice as harsh as a parched brook. He gave a nod. "My name is Weston." He was not thanked. By Tala didn't become softer. However, her gaze shifted to the fire as though it might suddenly belong to her as well. Ma was sleeping next to the fire on a straw mattress by daybreak. With her hands calm despite the swelling, Tala sat awake and carved a little object out of a twig. Uncertain of why the quiet between them didn't itch, Weston sipped his coffee while keeping both of his boots on the ground. Eventually he remarked, "You're not the first one they've tied up like that." Tala didn't raise her gaze. "For 2 nights we might be the first ones they leave." He didn't inquire as to who. He was not in need of names. A certain type of cruelty existed that didn't need signatures, only silence from those who ought to have put an end to it. "I have stew," he said. She gave one nod. He set it on fire. When Min's spoon slid into the mush, she laughed. "I am able to assist." Tala spoke quietly. Without saying anything, he gave her the ladle. Weston rode into town that evening. People left like if it were a sickness. When he requested cloth and sugar, the bartender frowned. "He's keeping them in his home," a woman muttered at the basic store. "Can you believe it?" He faced away from the murmurs. "Didn't know you were into scalps and savages, Clay," a rancher at the tavern laughed. Weston remained silent. He pushed the man against the wall after grabbing him by the collar. Teeth clenched. Repeat it. The man's tongue was choking him. Didn't believe so? With his ears burning and his fists clenched, he departed. He didn't care if the town rotted. The image that was ingrained in his consciousness was what mattered. Two girls with their hair being clawed by the wind while bound to shattered wood. Tala was cooking water back in the cabin. Min had sketched tiny images in the ash near the ground. Stars, flowers, and a stick-legged horse. Awkward, Weston murmured, setting down the tea, sugar, and towel. Tala nodded slightly. Thank you. She had never stated it before. Days went by, followed by a week. Weston made another cut. Tala mended a shutter that was broken. Ma still clung to her sister at night, but she started to limp less. On his porch, one morning, Weston discovered a carving of a spotless horse with a river shell braided in its hair. He only touched it once without talking about it. Tala stirred the stew that evening. Her gaze met his. There was softness for the first time. Her words, "You remind me of my father?" "That?" "Not quite yet, just a little bit." He refrained from pressing. All he did was nod. The wind ceased outside. It felt like spring might arrive for the first time in months. A week later there was another tap on the door. Pastor Elijah Boone holding a Bible in his fist while wearing a coat with the buttons. Up, he stayed outside. He started talking. Weston folded his arms. It always is. This place is unsafe for them. Out there they weren't safe. Elijah looked at the man in front of him and then back to the snow. He whispered that a marriage would bring peace. Weston pondered whether this was gossip or God. Elijah's throat cleared. They rhyme occasionally. Weston exited to find Tala at the fire, stroking Ma's hair. She read his face as she looked up. What were they seeking? He didn't respond. Nevertheless? She nodded, not important. We weren't found so you could return us. Long after the girls had fallen asleep that evening, Weston continued to sit by the fire. From the porch, the carved horse gazed back. He picked up her father's flute, which Tala had placed by the fireplace, and attempted to play it. The cabin was filled with the terrible sound. Minya laughed while she slept. He departed before dawn the following morning. Returned at noon. He has a package in his hands. On Tala's cot, he placed it. Slowly, she opened it. A simple, modest, blue cotton dress. She reverently caressed the cloth, not because of its value, but because of its significance. She gave him a puzzled glance. He simply looked into her eyes. Without grinning, like she was folding a vow, she folded the dress with care. They were standing under the tree behind the cabin that night. Tala's hair was adorned with early blooming flowers by Ma. Boone came silently. He made the vows without giving a sermon. The survivors made a silent vow to one another without exchanging rings or kisses. Tala then remarked, I was chained to a fence like a dog. However, you treated me like a human. Weston held her hand as if it were the last nice thing he would ever hold, yet he remained silent. The town observed from afar. There were no torches, only tension, folded arms, and mumbled oaths, but nobody came forward, nor that night, nor now. Tala sat next to the fire with Weston's coat draped over her shoulders while the wind rustled through the pine needles. Min dozed off snuggled up by the fireplace. While preparing tea, Tala remarked, At first, you weren't kind. I had no idea how. Weston whispered. After giving him a lengthy look, she rested her head on his shoulder. You do now. A fox moved through the snow outside. No one was cold inside. Nevertheless, the town had neither forgotten nor forgiven. A man who brought 2 Indian females home married one of them and allowed the other chuckle as if nothing had happened to her. People, especially those who needed someone to look down on, felt uneasy around the man. Elijah wouldn't be the next person to knock on the door. It will be someone brandishing a rifle or a badge. However, the fire crackled softly tonight. The stew simmered. She kept her hand in his. Additionally, Western Clay, who had previously been harsh and impolite, had discovered the subtle kind of grace. Something was whispered through the woods by the wind.